This is the long story of the Space Marines, told from the start. It is set far in the future, in a galaxy ruled by mankind. The time is the 41st millennium, 10,000 years from now. In this age, there is only war, and the stars are not kind. Humanity holds 1,000,000 worlds, spread across the dark. These worlds are bound together into one great realm, the Imperium. The Imperium is vast, old, and worn down by endless fighting. It is ruled in the name of one figure, the Emperor of mankind. The Emperor sits on a golden throne on holy Terra, the old Earth. He is kept alive by machines, more dead than living, yet still a god to his people to guard this realm. Humanity needs warriors greater than any normal man. These warriors are the Space Marines, also called the Adeptus Astartes. They are the Emperor's finest soldiers, made to be more than human. A Space Marine stands far taller than a man, broad and heavy, with muscle. He wears thick power armor and carries weapons most men cannot lift. He feels little fear, needs little sleep, and can fight for days. To understand what these warriors are, the story must go back. It must go back to the time before the Imperium was even born. Long ago, the Earth was broken, lost in a long age of darkness. Warp storms cut the planet off from the rest of the stars. Nations had fallen, and cruel warlords ruled over the ruins. In this broken world, one man rose who would change everything. He had lived in secret for thousands of years, hidden among men. He was the most powerful psyker the human race had ever known. In time, he revealed himself and took the name the Emperor. His dream was simple and very large. He wanted to unite mankind. He wanted to end the wars, the fear, and the worship of false gods. He believed that only a united humanity could survive the dark to come. So he raised armies and set out to conquer the broken Earth. These long wars to unite the planet were called the Unification Wars. One by one, the warlords fell, and Terra became whole again. But the Emperor was not finished. He looked up at the stars. He planned to take back every human world lost in the long night. For that, he needed soldiers without number and commanders beyond compare. Deep beneath the mountains of Terra, the Emperor built hidden labs. There he worked on his greatest creation in secret for many years. He shaped 20 sons, grown from his own gene and his own will. They were not normal men and not quite gods. They were the Primarchs. Each Primarch was a perfect warrior and a brilliant leader. Each was strong enough to break tanks and wise enough to rule worlds. They were the sons of the Emperor, and he loved them as a father. But the Primarchs were never allowed to grow up at his side. The dark powers of the warp feared what these sons might do. These powers are the gods of chaos who live in the warp beyond. They reached into the Emperor's labs and stole the infant Primarchs away. The 20 babies were scattered, flung across the whole galaxy. Each one fell upon a different far world, alone and lost. And so each Primarch grew up apart, in a place all his own. Some landed on harsh worlds of ice, or ash, or endless war. Each was shaped by the world he fell upon. For good and for ill, most rose to become kings, generals, or saviors of their people. The emperor did not know where his sons had gone, but he kept his work. The Primarchs were lost, but the emperor had kept their gene. From tiny samples of each son, he made a thing called gene seed. Gene seed is the living seed that can change a man into a marine. It grows into a set of new organs, placed inside a young body. There are 19 of these organs in all, each with its own task. Some give a marine a second heart, so he can run without tiring. Some let him heal fast, eat poison, or sleep with half his mind awake. One organ, the black carapace, lets him wear his armor like skin. With these gifts, a normal boy is remade into a transhuman warrior. Using the gene seed of each Primarch, the Emperor raised great armies. He gathered them into 20 groups, each many thousands strong. These groups were the Space Marine Legions, the first of their kind. Each legion carried the gene seed of one Primarch, its missing father, and so each legion took on the temper and the gifts of that son. The legions were a weapon like none the galaxy had ever seen. With them, the Emperor was ready to begin his great work among the stars. The Emperor's campaign to take back the galaxy was the Great Crusade. His fleets sailed out from Terra into the wide and silent dark. World by world, the legions freed the lost colonies of mankind. Where men had forgotten the old Earth, the Emperor brought them home. Where Xenos ruled human worlds, the legions drove them out. It was an age of hope and of order spreading among the stars. And as the crusade reached each far world, a wonder kept happening on planet after planet. The Emperor found one of his lost sons. Each Primarch was found grown, ruling the very world he had fallen on. When father and son met again, the Emperor gave each his legion. The Primarch took command of the warriors made from his own gene. One son was Robout Gilliman, calm and wise, who built whole worlds in peace. He led the Ultramarines, the largest and most ordered legion of all. One son was Sanguinius, noble and winged, beloved by all his brothers. He led the Blood Angels, beautiful and fierce in equal measure. One son was Lemon Russ, wild and proud, who led the Space Wolves. One was Rogel Dorn, the master of walls, who led the Imperial Fists. One was Ferrus Manus, with hands of living metal of the Iron Hands. One was Vulcan, kind and steady, who led the Salamanders. And one was Horus Lupercal, the first son the Emperor ever found. Horus was the brightest of them all, the closest to his father's heart. He led the legion known then as the Luna Wolves. 2 of the 20 sons were lost from all records. Their names struck out. What became of them? No one is allowed to say. 18 remained. Together, the Emperor and his sons swept across the galaxy. For 200 years, the Great Crusade carried light into the dark. It seemed that the dream of a united mankind had truly come true, but no campaign so vast could be led by one man forever. the emperor decided to return to Terra, to a secret work of his own. Beneath the palace, he was building a hidden road through the warp. This road, the Webway, would free mankind from the dangers of warp travel. He told no one the true reason he was leaving the war behind. Before he left, he chose one son to command in his place. He named Horus the War Master, first among all the Primarchs. From now on, Horus would lead the Great Crusade in the Emperor's name. It was the highest honor, and Horus was proud to receive it. But the honor came with a weight he had not expected. His brothers now had to take orders from one of their own. Some grew jealous, and some began to grumble in the quiet. And Horus himself began to wonder why his father had gone home. He had given everything for the dream and felt cast aside. The emperor never explained the Webway or the throne he sat upon. Into that silence and that doubt, a darker power began to whisper. The whisper came from the gods of chaos, watching from the warp. They had hated the emperor since the day he first denied them. They saw in Horus a doubt they could widen into a wound. On a world called Davin, Horus was struck down by a poisoned blade. His legion, desperate to save him, turned to dark healers for help. These healers served chaos, and they led his spirit into the warp. There, the dark gods showed Horus a false and twisted vision. They showed him a future where the emperor was worshipped as a god. They told him his father had only used his sons as tools. They promised Horus that with their gifts, he could set mankind free. It was all a lie, but in his pain and pride, Horus believed it. He rose from his sick healed, but his heart was no longer loyal. In secret, Horus pledged himself and his legion to chaos. Then, quietly, he began to gather his brothers to his cause. He turned first to those Primarchs, who already nursed some grudge. Fulgrim of the Emperor's children, lost in his hunger for perfection. Angron of the World Eaters, ruled by rage he could not master. Mortarion of the Death Guard, grim and bitter against the throne. Lorgar of the Word Bearers, who had always longed for a god to worship. One by one, Horus drew his disgruntled brothers into the dark. Half of the legions slowly turned, while the other half knew nothing. The greatest betrayal in all of history was being prepared in silence. The treason began at a world named Istvan III. Horus now ruled 4 traitor legions, but not every marine had turned. Within each traitor legion, many still kept faith with the emperor. Horus could not march on Terra with loyal men at his back, so he set a cruel trap to be rid of them all at once. He gathered the loyal warriors and sent them down to Istvan III. Then, from orbit, the traitor fleet rained fire upon the city. Whole regions burned, and thousands of loyal Marines died in moments. Yet many survived in the ruins and fought on against their own kin. Brother killed brother in the rubble, in the first battle of the war. This was the Istvan III atrocity, the opening wound of the heresy. When word of the treason reached Terra, the emperor was stunned. He sent 7 loyal legions to Istvan to stop the War Master. But not all 7 of those legions were truly loyal. The loyal Marines landed first at a place called Istvan V. The Iron Hands, the Salamanders, and the Raven Guard struck hard. They drove deep into Horus's lines and called for the rest to follow. 4 more legions landed behind them, and the loyalists cheered. But those 4 legions were traitors, hidden until that moment. They raised their guns and fired into the backs of their brothers. The loyal Marines were caught between 2 armies with no escape. This was the Drop Site Massacre, one of the darkest hours of the war. Ferrus Manus, the Iron Hand's father, was killed by his brother Fulgrim. Vulcan was taken and tortured. Corax of the Raven Guard barely escaped. 3 loyal legions were broken nearly to nothing on that field. Now the lines were drawn. 9 legions stood with Horus, and 9 legions stood with the Emperor against their fallen kin. The galaxy split in 2, and the long civil war began in earnest. For 7 years, the war burned across 1,000 worlds. Horus did not race straight for Terra. He took his time. He spread his forces wide to keep the loyal legions apart. He wanted his loyal brothers scattered and far away, so that when he reached Terra, few could come to its aid. When at last his fleet arrived, the Emperor's home was nearly alone. Only a few legions stood ready to defend the cradle of mankind. Rogel Dorn, the Master of Walls, had made Terra a fortress. The whole planet bristled with guns, walls, and deep bunkers. The Imperial Fists, the Blood Angels, and the White Scars held the line. Then Horus came, and the siege of Terra began. It was the largest battle the galaxy had ever seen. Traitor armies beyond counting threw themselves at the Great Walls. Demons poured out of the warp to fight beside the traitor Marines. The sky burned, and the walls of the palace cracked and fell. For weeks the loyalists held, dying brother by brother. Slowly, the traitors broke through, gate after broken gate. At last, Horus knew that victory was near and grew bold. He lowered the shields of his great warship as a challenge. He dared his father to come and face him, 1-to-1. The Emperor saw the trap, but knew the war could end no other way. He gathered his strongest sons and teleported aboard the ship. Sanguinius, the winged angel, reached Horus first, alone. He fought his fallen brother, though he knew he could not win. Horus, swollen with the power of chaos, struck Sanguinius down. The noblest of the Primarchs died at the hands of his own brother. Then the Emperor arrived and faced the War Master across the wreck. Father and son fought as no 2 beings had ever fought before. The Emperor held back at first, still hoping to save his son. That mercy cost him dearly. Horus wounded him again and again. But in a final moment, Horus showed his true and broken soul. The Emperor saw that nothing of his son was left to save. With the last of his strength, he unleashed his full power. He destroyed Horus, body and spirit, so that he could never return. The War Master was gone, but the Emperor was broken beyond healing. The emperor's body was carried, dying, from the ruined ship. He was placed upon the golden throne, a machine of great power. The throne keeps his shattered body alive, but only just. He can no longer walk or speak or lead his people in the flesh. For 10,000 years he has sat there, between life and death. From the throne, his mind still lights a beacon across the warp. That beacon guides the ships of mankind through the endless dark. With their father gone, the loyal legions drove the traitors back. This long hunt was called the Scouring, a war of revenge and grief. The traitors fled into a vast warp storm, the Eye of Terror. There, in that hell, they remain to this day, twisted by chaos. They did not die. The warp kept them alive, hateful and changed. And from time to time, they pour out to make war on the Imperium again. So ended the great civil war, called the Horus Heresy. The dream of a united mankind was broken and never fully healed. After the war, the Imperium had to be rebuilt from its ruins. The one who took up that task was Robout Guilliman. He had reached Terra too late to fight in the final siege. Now, as one of the few Primarchs left, he led the rebuilding. Guilliman looked back on the heresy and saw a hard truth. The legions had been far too large and far too easy to turn. One Primarch could command 100,000 Marines alone. If such a leader fell, a whole legion could fall with him. Guilliman swore that this must never be allowed to happen again, so he wrote a great book of war, the Codex Astartes. The Codex set down how the Space Marines should be made and led. Its greatest law broke the huge legions into smaller pieces. Each new piece was called a chapter, just 1,000 warriors strong. 1,000 Marines was a force too small to conquer the Imperium, but still strong enough to win wars across the stars. This breaking of the legions was named the Second Founding. The old loyal legions were divided into many new chapters. Some chapters kept the old names, like the Ultramarines. Others took new names and new colors, but shared the same blood. Each chapter would rule itself, answering to no other chapter. Each would guard its own gene seed and choose its own recruits. Under the Codex, a chapter is split into 10 companies. Each company holds 100 Marines, led by a captain. The first company holds the veterans, the oldest and most deadly. The 10th company holds the youngest, still in their training. This pattern has held for 10,000 years, with few changes. And so the Space Marines we know today were truly born. It is worth pausing here to tell how a Marine is made. For a Space Marine does not begin his life as a warrior. He begins as an ordinary boy, born on some distant world. Many chapters recruit from harsh planets full of danger. On such worlds, only the strongest children live to grow up. The chapter watches these worlds and chooses the most promising. The chosen boys are called aspirants, and their trials begin. They must pass cruel tests of strength, courage, and will. Many do not survive these trials. Only the very best go on. A boy must usually be young, between about 10 and 14. His body must still be growing for the change to take hold. Once chosen, the aspirant becomes a neophyte, and the surgery starts. The 19 organs of the gene seed are placed inside him, one by one. Each new organ reshapes his body in some deep and lasting way. His bones thicken, his muscles swell, and new hearts begin to beat. Drugs and deep training help the strange new organs settle in. The change is slow, painful, and dangerous, and some still die. Those who live are no longer quite human. They are something more. The young Marine then serves as a scout, lightly armored and quick. He learns to fight, to track, and to obey under fire. A veteran sergeant teaches him the ways of war and faith. He learns the long history of his chapter and its heroes. When at last he is ready, he receives his final implant. This is the black carapace, fitted beneath the skin of his chest and back. It carries small ports that link his body to his armor. With it, a Marine can wear power armor as if it were his own skin. The armor answers his thoughts and moves as fast as he does. Now he is a full battle brother, a true space Marine at last. He is given his own suit of armor, often older than any nation. He takes his place among his brothers, ready to fight and to die. From that day, the chapter is his only family, and war his only life. He may live for centuries, healing from wounds that would kill a man, but almost none die of old age. War claims them, sooner or later. After the second founding, the long age of the Imperium began. For 10,000 years, the Space Marines have stood as its shield. They are few, perhaps only 1 million in all the galaxy. Against them stand enemies beyond all counting. There are the orcs, brutal green giants who live only to fight. They sweep across worlds in great roaring tides, hard to ever truly kill. There are the Eldar, an ancient and dying people of great skill. Proud and graceful, they walk their own strange and secret paths. There are the Tyranids, vast swarms from beyond the galaxy's edge. They come in numbers past imagining, to eat all life in their path. There are the Necrons, undying machines waking from ancient tombs. They slept for millions of years, and now rise to claim the stars again. And worst of all, there are the forces of chaos in the warp. The traitor legions still pour from the Eye of Terror to make war. They are led by the same fallen Primarchs, kept alive by dark gods. Against all of these, the Space Marines are sent where the need is worst. They are not the great armies of the Imperium. That is the Human Guard. The Space Marines are the sharp edge, the strike that turns a war. They fall from the sky in drop pods onto the hardest battlefields. They take what cannot be taken and hold what cannot be held. Each chapter keeps its own ways, its own colors, and its own pride. The Ultramarines hold the war-torn worlds of the realm of Ultramar. The space wolves fight as wild hunters, scorning the strict codex. The Blood Angels carry a noble grace and a hidden, ancient curse. The Dark Angels keep secrets even from the rest of the Imperium. The Imperial Fists still stand as the master builders of walls. The Salamanders fight to shield the weak, kinder than most of their kind. There are 1,000 chapters and more, each with its own long tale. But all of them share the same blood, drawn from the lost Primarchs, and all of them serve the same broken father on his golden throne. For most of those 10,000 years, the lines barely moved. The Imperium did not grow. It only held on, slowly bleeding. But near the end of the 41st millennium, the dark deepened. A great traitor named Abaddon, heir to Horus, gathered his strength. He had launched many wars from the Eye of Terror over the ages. Now he launched his greatest, his 13th Great Crusade of Chaos. His target was Cadia, the fortress world that guarded the Eye. For all of history, Cadia had held the gate against the dark. This time, after a terrible war, Cadia fell and was broken. With the gate undone, the warp tore open across the whole galaxy. A vast wound split the heavens from one edge to the other. This wound was called the Great Rift, the largest warp storm ever known. It cut the Imperium in two and swallowed half of it in shadow. On one side, the Emperor's beacon could still be seen. On the other, the dark side, his light was lost, and ships flew blind. Worlds without number fell to chaos, to Xenos, and to fear. It seemed the long defeat of mankind had finally come. Yet, in that darkest hour, a light returned that none expected. For 10,000 years, only the Emperor had remained of his line. All his sons were dead, or lost, or fallen into chaos. But one loyal son had not truly died. He had only slept. Robout Guilliman had been struck down long ago by a traitor's blade. A poison held him frozen near death for 100 centuries. His ultramarines had kept his still body in a hidden shrine. Now, as the galaxy broke, two strange allies came to wake him. One was Belisarius Cawl, a master of machines older than most worlds. The other was Ivrain, a priestess of a young Eldar god of the dead. Together, with science and with strange power, they healed the Primarch. Robout Guilliman opened his eyes after 10,000 years of sleep. He woke into a galaxy he barely knew, ruled in his father's name. He saw the Imperium grown harsh, cruel, and lost in blind worship. It was not the bright realm of reason he had once helped to build. Filled with grief, he traveled to Terra to seek the Emperor himself. He stood at last before the golden throne and his broken father. What passed between them there, Guilliman has never told a soul, but he came away grim and ready to take up the war alone. Cawl, the master of machines, had brought Guilliman a gift. For long centuries, in secret, he had worked on the gene seed. He had taken the Emperor's old plans and made them better still. From them, he had grown a new and stronger kind of space marine. These warriors were taller, tougher, and faster than the old. They were called the Primaris Space Marines, and they numbered in the thousands. They had waited, sleeping, until the day of greatest need. Now Gilliman woke them and sent them out across the realm. Some went to form whole new chapters of their own. Others went to fill the ranks of the ancient chapters beside the old. This great making of new Marines was called the Ultima Founding. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Marines grew in number. With this new strength, Gilliman gathered a mighty host. He launched it out into the dark to drive back the night. This vast campaign was named the Indomitus Crusade. For a long age, its fleets fought across the broken galaxy. They freed worlds, reopened roads, and steadied the failing realm. They could not win the war. No one can truly win this war, but they stopped the fall and held the line once more. This new age, with the rift open and the Primarch returned, has a name. It is called the Era Indomitus, the age that endures. And so the story comes to where it stands today. The galaxy is still dark, and the war has no end in sight. The great rift still burns across the heavens, splitting the realm. The traitor legions still hate, and the Emperor still does not heal. But the Space Marines still stand, as they have for 10,000 years. They are the sons of lost Primarchs, made from the gene of giants. They are forged from ordinary boys into transhuman warriors. They feel little fear, and they do not turn from any foe. They fall from the sky onto the worst fields of every war. They ask for no reward and expect no rest, and few grow old. Each one knows that he will likely die with a weapon in his hand, and each one goes to that end without complaint. For his chapter and his father, they guard a realm that is harsh and frightened and far from kind. Yet, without them, that realm would have fallen long ago. They are the thin gray wall between mankind and the endless dark. Behind that wall, a trillion souls live on and do not know their names. The Primarchs are mostly gone, and the Emperor is more dead than alive, but their sons fight on, world after world, age after age. They were made to be humanity's finest, and so they remain. This has been the long story of the Space Marines, from the first dream on Terra to the war that still burns today. A story of fathers and sons, of loyalty and betrayal, of duty without end. And in the cold dark of the 41st millennium, the war goes on.